This is Create the Next from ProCFO Partners, where every week we explore strategies and ideas for financial management and growth to help today's businesses put their financial picture in context.
Chris Bentliff here with Byron Kanaley from ProCFO Partners. And Byron, we're talking today about what makes a company profitable and how a company can better approach the idea of profitability. I think sometimes we think of it as just another line on the reports and that profitability is somehow inevitable, or if we do these 4 or 5 things, business planning or whatever, profitability will be inevitable. But I don't think it's that simple. What do you think is the best way for a company to achieve profitability?
Well, thanks for the question. The one thing that I've come to over the years and looking at businesses and their struggle with profitability is it's hard work. It really is hard work. And it's not something that just happens. It needs to be planned for. You need to look at all of the different components because there's a lot of moving parts to a profitable business. And many of them are controllable. Some of them are not. I think the year 2020 has proven that. But this is where planning comes in. Planning to be profitable, I find to be the key to profitability.
So planning is the key, but tell me what you mean by that. How would you define business planning? My sense of it might be very different. I might think it's, okay, what's my next 6 months or year or 2 quarters? What do you mean when we're talking about business planning?
So from a profitability standpoint, the profit formula that kind of works its way through a financial statement is the relationship between revenue, costs, and expenses. So planning your revenue, planning the costs, ultimately getting a gross margin percentage out of that, and then managing your expenses, primarily people costs being the largest chunk of that. The relationship of that revenue and those costs and expenses will yield profitability if it's properly managed and properly planned. If you just wing it and you say, okay, we're going to just sell X and we'll worry about everything else later, chances are you're not going to see profitability because there's just too many control items that will yield expenses that you didn't anticipate, or will yield costs that you didn't anticipate, or will yield revenue that you didn't hit. I think that the one caution that I give most business owners when I work with them is it's hard work because every day you are fighting an economic reality of expenses rise to meet income. And that needs to be paid attention to every day.
So that's fascinating. And as you're talking about some of this stuff, I think sometimes business leaders don't appreciate that incredibly astute point that our expenses rise to meet income. I think we often think that profitability is an inevitability if we just kind of pay our dues. So we sometimes think, let's not even worry about profitability right now. We'll worry about that next year, as though it will just sort of emerge itself to become a concern at some point or 2 years from now. Should I be starting from the ground floor? I'm a startup. I'm brand new. How do I start planning for profitability? How do I start creating a model even for profitability immediately? Or is that even something I should do? And the same question, I guess, if I'm a more mature company and I'm trying to manage profitable growth, do I have similar concerns there, or am I completely in different spaces once I reach a certain point of maturity in my company?
Well, going back to the theme of profitability is hard. When you start a business, you generally have, you might have investors, you might have a good revenue model, you got some products you're going to go to market, but you're making things up as you go along. How many people do I need? How much is it going to cost? Where should we have our offices? And if you get a good investment chunk or a good loan from a financial institution, you're flush with cash and you start spending the same dollar over and over again. Okay, I need this person, then I need that person, then I need this resource, and I'm going to travel, and I'm going to hire consultants, and the money is there to enable you to do all of these things in your vision that allows you to start your business, but it doesn't yield profitability. There needs to be a culture of budgeting and planning that says this isn't going to come easy. So therefore, yes, we need to spend this money. Yes, we need to build this infrastructure and hire these people. But how are we going to actually make money where revenues will exceed costs and expenses over a period of time? And I do find that entrepreneurs always feel that there's another avenue of investment waiting on the sidelines because they've got this great idea. And I think one of the realities are that I like to say is if you're not profitable, you're going to run out of cash. I'll just repeat that. If you're not profitable, you will run out of cash. There's only so much that a lender will lend or an investor will invest in a business that's not profitable, because the cash is just going to keep getting spent and you're not going to show any kind of return on that investment, and then you're stuck. So starting from the get-go, knowing that you need to get to profitability, you need to be able to manage your expenses, and that it is complicated and it is hard to do, you build that culture. You build a culture of budgeting, you build a culture of planning, and you build a culture of profitability. We're in it for a return on investment so we can hire these people. They have livelihoods. Our customers are stakeholders. They rely on the goods and services we sell. We can't be flippant in how we go to market and how we run our business, because being cash strapped all the time does not allow for good decision making.
It's a great point, and you're right. It stifles the imagination. It stifles creativity. It makes us reactive instead of responsive when we're finding ourselves under the gun like that with cash. You mentioned an interesting word, which is culture, and a culture of profitability. And that, in my opinion, is going to be an interesting perspective to a lot of our listeners, because I don't know that we consider culture in the same context as profitability. And it brings for me to mind something that ProCFO Partners uses, which is called the FGC Financial Flywheel, which has all these interesting financial functions, but even business components, all in relationship to each other. And culture is one of them. What other things are impacting profitability? What other things are driving profitability or are giving context to its performance that I might not be thinking of? Culture is one of them that's really interesting, but are there other dynamics that maybe are 3 steps removed, but if that one's haywire, you can expect profitability to not be where it needs to be?
Yeah, I think that one of the largest costs that you do have within a business are people costs. So it's how you manage your people, how you treat your people, how you incent your people. I think that that's an important component of having that HR, people focus, so that you've got smart people. You want to enable them to help you implement a plan that will yield profitability if we implement it properly. So regardless of whether it's an engineer or customer service or accounting or sales, everybody needs to understand their part in this whole grand scheme of things as to how we're going to move this business forward. They take ownership of it and they become part of that solution. If they're not made aware of how difficult it is and what their role is and how everyone else depends on what they do, then you end up with the rowboat where people are all rowing in a different direction.
How do you feel like the CFO fits into that? Because as you talk about profitability, I think, again, there's this sort of outdated notion that the CFO would come in waving papers saying, profitability is at whatever percent this year, and the reports prove it. But there's so many more dynamics involved here. What role does the CFO have in the center of that, or maybe even on the peripheral of that sometimes, to help an organization manage culture, manage people, manage sales performance, manage all these inventory and revenue and all these things that can impact profitability?
Well, I read a great book once called The Great Game of Business. And the topic of this whole book was how you provide financial information that some people may feel is sensitive and no one should know about this, versus everybody needs to know where we're at, where are the yardsticks, where are the metrics, how are we doing as a business. I lose track of it sometimes in that I'm so close to it. I know the numbers inside and out. I know the revenue targets. I generate all the financial analysis. But if I'm an engineer or I'm in customer service or I'm on, I'm removed from that because my job is not numbers. I don't know what's going on. I'm just doing my job. So not trying to make them accountants or overwhelm them with financial information, but making sure that they understand what they're doing contributes to the overall success of the business. I think profitability is more about the culture and all of the different pieces that go on than, okay, you need to be mechanical about it.
You know what? Every conversation I'm having with folks helps me realize just how true that is and how mischaracterized so many things about financial functions are. That there's such a misperception that it is about mechanics and it is about gears turning, and it's really about so many other, overlapping things and so many other more esoteric things that maybe you wouldn't have even thought of, like culture, that really drive things. Or, deciding, as you said, we're going to be a profitable organization and here's how and here's why. And rather than just letting it hopefully happen, which is what I think a lot of companies do.
Right. Yeah. And I've, as a financial person, I love the entrepreneurial environment. I love startups. I love being able to provide that guidance. But I also find from a consulting standpoint, they need constant fresh blood because my voice gets old. After a while. I'm viewed as standing in the way of progress. And where I find, from my perspective, I see that the visionary is getting too far away from reality as to what profitability can be achieved. And, there's so much at risk. I've seen, people lose their jobs, their livelihoods, all the downsizing, all the right sizing, all of these pivots that need to be made when you start running low on cash. It's because you haven't built profitability high enough on your food chain. It says we need to be profitable. We can't just keep borrowing money. Yeah.
Fascinating stuff. And really, I think taps into so many of those other things you talked about. It's easy to point out, look, we don't have a culture of profitability here. And here's the evidence of that. Here's how I can tell that that's true. Here are some things we need to do differently, or here's my guidance to make some of these other things happen.
Right. And I do find that the enthusiasm that goes through a business that has a success in a round and raises money. And now we've got some money. Now we can do this, this, and this. Well, they do this, this, and this, and then they do this, this, and this again, and they do it again, and they keep spending the same dollar. And every dollar spent on a raise needs to yield maybe not a dollar return on that investment, but a step towards that profitability goal. And that's a measurement tool that is really fun to try and analyze, because you have to keep the CEO, who's the visionary, the business owner, the founder is the visionary, who's really saying, well, I need to accomplish all of these goals, and then we're going to be profitable. And, I like the notion of let's grow the business profitably. Let's not just grow the business and then try and be profitable, because then you've lost the culture. You're in a spending mode and we'll just get another raise and then we'll be able to hire more people. And I have found that based on the evidence of my experience, that does not work.
Incredibly valuable perspectives. Byron, thank you so much for sharing some of these insights. I mean, I got some notes I've been taking down, and I really appreciate all of this guidance and advice for our listeners. Thanks so much. I can't wait to have another conversation. I feel like we just scratched the surface. We can dive into some of these deeper things together.
Great. Nice talking with you.
Thanks, Byron. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching, and a special thanks to our subscribers. Consider becoming one today. Visit ProCFOPartners.com for more strategies and ideas for financial management and growth to help you put your business's financial picture in context.